Steve, just give us the latest in terms of what we've been hearing from NPC officials and Carrie Lam.
Yeah, I mean, I have been covering Hong Kong for a long time, even before the handover of 1997. I first moved here in '91, so I have seen tremendous change, and this could perhaps be the biggest legislative change that's in the cards for Hong Kong that I've witnessed, and that is actually needing to change the law here and the mini constitution to change how the chief executive and how legislative council members will be chosen. And essentially, the message we're getting from the National People's Congress is that Xi Jinping and the upper echelons of the Chinese government want to rid the Hong Kong government, in particular the Legislative Council, of anti-China forces, or those pawns, as the Xinhua news agency said in a commentary, the local pawns of the anti-China forces from abroad. So we're just getting those lines that you mentioned a few minutes ago, Tom, where even Carrie Lam, the chief executive here, in a statement saying Hong Kong will amend its election legislation after China passes this new regulations. The draft regulations have been passed around the NPC delegates there in Beijing. They'll debate it over the next week and a half or so, likely approved. Dare I say, or some people say, the rubber stamp legislative body will likely approve it, as they did last May with the National Security Law that was then passed on to the National People's Congress Standing Committee for the ultimate decision. And of course, they did pass that law, and Hong Kong since July 1st has been under the national security law, including now many local lawmakers or former lawmakers of the pro-democracy camp who are now facing possible trials, definitely facing charges under the national security law. So the vice chair of the National People's Congress, I'm going on a little bit long here, but this is significant. He is saying that this new regulations will empower the Chief Executive Committee here in Hong Kong, the members, to participate in the nomination of all LegCo candidates and to elect, quote, a relatively large share of the LegCo members. And, Tom and David, you guys know, current makeup right now is half the Legislative Council seats here in Hong Kong are open for direct election, but those elections have been delayed by the chief executive here on the grounds of the pandemic. But many in the pro-democracy camp here say it was because Beijing wanted to change the electoral laws, and that's what they're about to do.
Yeah, and what does this then mean for them, the pro-democracy camp, broadly the opposition? It seems the room to maneuver within, of course, these so-called red lines is getting smaller and smaller, Steve.
Well, keep in mind, the remaining 15 pro-democracy candidates in the Legislative Council at the end of last year resigned en masse after 4 of their colleagues were disqualified because Beijing came down with the mandate saying you have to pledge allegiance and loyalty to the Communist Party and to China in order to serve. So the pro-democracy camp all resigned en masse. So there are no pro-democracy opposition lawmakers in the current Legislative Council. So what does that mean for opposition, as we say in Hong Kong? Well, it's not going to look like the more previous iteration of opposition, pro-democracy supporters. Perhaps the opposition is now the up-and-coming Bauhinia party, which still, though, is pro-business, pro-establishment, pro-Beijing.